Hi everyone, I'm Kaiser Ryu here. One of the greatest game developers of all time has to be Tomonobu Itagaki, creator of Dead or Alive and the 3D Ninja Gaiden games. Sure, other devs like John Romero or Hideo Kojima are more iconic, but I can't think of another developer that has interviews and quotes just as awesome and entertaining as the games that he makes. I can list off plenty right now. Galapagosian Lolita complexed chicken. They're not enemies, they're targets. You might as well cut vegetables, but if you do so, you should really be embarrassed. I mean, there's so many. To boot, Itagaki created some of the most influential fighting games ever made and crafted arguably the two best action games of all time. Sadly, Itagaki passed away last month at only 58 years old. According to an article by Milky-chan, which I'll have a link to in the description, the hard drinking and smoking lifestyle took a toll on Itagaki, resulting in him passing away far too soon. To honor Itagaki, let's go over all his directed/lead games in order from worst to best. Now, do note there are two omissions. Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword, which I personally don't count as an Itagaki game as he was a producer on that, and the original Dead or Alive 2, as I haven't played it. The remake Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate, however, will be included, so DOA 2 still remains on the list. Let's get into it, and make sure to like and subscribe for more lists like these. At the very bottom is Dead or Alive 1, and this shouldn't come as a surprise. DOA 1 is a solid fighting game for the resources Team Ninja and Tecmo had at the time, which wasn't much. Keep in mind, this game was called Dead or Alive for a reason, as the fate of Tecmo was riding on this game's success. It was successful, leading to bigger and much better sequels, but the original still feels like a prototype of what Dead or Alive would eventually become. Clearly influenced by Yu Suzuki's Virtual Fighter series, DOA 1 introduced a modified version of the ring-out system popular in VF. Once you got to the outer edges of the arena, the floor was explosive, meaning any move that would drop your opponent to the ground would have increased damage. Ring-out still exists if you go all the way to the end of the arena, though. All sequels expanded on this concept, making arenas a totally different beast. But that isn't the only reason why DOA 1 sticks out like a sore thumb. DOA 2 through 4 have extremely consistent controller layouts on Xbox, with only DOA 1 having different inputs on the Xbox pad. There's also not a lot of content here compared to the sequels, resulting in a game that just pales in comparison to every other DOA entry. To be frank, I think even DOA 6 is better than DOA 1. Still, it was a fun time in the arcades, and most importantly, DOA 1 was a huge hit, earning Tecmo more money and resources to pump into its all-time great sequel. This entry is going to get a lot of flack, but the second worst Itagaki game is Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball for the original Xbox. Similar to DOA 1, the first Extreme game just doesn't have the content you would see in future entries. Sure, the volleyball is a lot of fun, but that's the only minigame, besides pool hopping. That's 2 minigames in total if you disregard the gambling stuff. That just isn't enough for, a $50 purchase back in the day? And if you don't like the volleyball, well, too bad. There's nothing you can switch to. The licensed music is great, the graphics are stellar for the time, and it has offline multiplayer, which isn't present in the sequel, and the core volleyball is a good time. However, DOA X1 just feels a bit empty when you compare it to its larger-than-life follow-up. This is another title that many would place a bit higher, and that's Devil's Third. Despite being a critical and commercial failure, this title was undoubtedly years ahead in the games industry with its multiplayer. Now, the multiplayer only lasted for a year or so, leading to most not playing it, but from people who did, it was a phenomenal to play slasher-shooter hybrid that still hasn't been replicated in the online space. Plus, it offered a game-changing territory system. You can absolutely see elements of future titles like Fallout 76 or Helldivers 2 and 2015's Devil's Third, with a nuking of player-made bases and control over territories. There was even some serious drama going on between the factions that you would never see in any other online shooter, still to this day. However, with the servers shutting down, most have only played the campaign, which is fun, but you can spot many problems with it that the original team, minus Itagaki, would eventually improve in Wanted Dead. Regenerating health, ammo scarcity, better balance between ranged and melee combat, and the controls were all changed for the better in Soleil's latest project. I would highly recommend to play in score attack mode, the definitive way to experience Devil's Third in my opinion. Playing for score is a lot more fun, further encouraging melee combat and maximizing the game's hybrid nature, sliding and jump attacking fools. There's even special hats you can wear, 2 unique ones per stages, adding even more wacky fun. It feels like the game is designed around score attack mode, and it's a shame you must beat the game normally once before you unlock it. All in all, Devil's Third is a fun time, although very flawed, and with its insane price price tag, it's hard to recommend to newcomers. You're best off emulating it as it offers a pretty solid 60 FPS from what I've heard. Visuals aren't as good as original hardware, but performance is what matters most. Next up is a massive guilty pleasure for me, and that's Dead or Alive Extreme 2. Notice that they dropped the beach volleyball part, because Extreme 2 transforms this series from a sports game to a full-blown vacation sim. The original had a measly 2 minigames, but Extreme 2 has 7. Beach volleyball and pool hopping returns, but Extreme 2 introduces beach flags, tug-of-war, butt battle, water slide, and the best one, jet ski races. Tomonobu Itagaki didn't direct Extreme 2, that was Katsunori Ihara, but he still played a huge role, being credited as chief designer and software architect. This is because Itagaki created the game engine used for jet ski races, which is entirely different from the rest of Extreme 2, and designed all the courses by himself. I think that's a huge accomplishment, especially given how great the jet ski races are. Being very similar to the Wave Race series, these are so much fun to play and a great addition as the second primary minigame alongside volleyball. Some criticize the volleyball changes in Extreme 2. I personally prefer the way it is in the sequel as it's more free-form and skill-based, but I do agree that the original played smoother and had more tight controls. Even if you don't like the volleyball, all the other additions should make up for it. Extreme 2 is now in HD, looking better than ever, and the breast physics also offers a controversial change, having each breast move independently. I personally think this makes the game even more entertaining with the wacky, ridiculous breast physics. It's funny, and Itagaki stated, that he makes entertainment, and these physics lead to much entertainment, I'm not gonna lie. Another incredible addition that makes Extreme 2 one of my comfort games is the brand new English voice acting. Besides the PS2 version of Dead or Alive 2 Hardcore, which isn't Itagaki's preferred version anyway, this was the first DOA game to introduce an entire English voice cast for not only the cutscenes, but for the whole game. It's so damn good, with it being funny, entertaining, and just a lot of fun.
I tried really hard, but how utterly boring. Are you even trying?
I have to thank Andrew Skamansky, if that's how you pronounce it, for sticking with his guns and keeping the English VO in the game, as Itagaki wanted it removed. It adds so much charm to the experience and transforms the characters' personalities beautifully. Kokoro is the girl with self-esteem issues that deserves a big gold star. Ayane is the sassy, entitled bitch. Tina is the all-American Texan strongwoman, Christy is the psychopath, and much more. It's amazing that Ninja Gaiden 4, 19 years later, has worse voice acting than this game, that Itagaki didn't even like. However, I love it, and combined with the unique character voice lines, animations, and even item descriptions, I just always have a blast with this game. Now, there are issues. The volleyball isn't as good for most. The soundtrack is mostly the same. There's no offline multiplayer, only online, which is bullshit. And Extreme 2 sadly introduced predatory microtransactions into console gaming. Shortly after release, Team Ninja patched the game to remove the gamertag sign-out exploit people would use for successful gift giving and roulette payouts. Itagaki stated this was patched for better game balance, and he also didn't want players to cheat. He wanted players to overcome their mistakes and losses, but in reality it was likely patched due to the new microtransaction system implemented post-launch with the Crystal Boutique. Yes, you could buy all the swimsuits for all the characters for the low price of nearly $400. Considering 100%ing Dead or Alive Extreme 2 could potentially take up to 1,000 hours, yeah, I just coughed up the money to get all the achievements in this game in around 100 hours instead. That's a real sad note about this game's legacy that most don't talk about, and I really wished someone talked to Itagaki about this predatory microtransaction system before he passed. However, at the end of the day, Extreme 2 is still an absolute blast that I love dearly. The first Dead or Alive game on Xbox was DOA 3, and what an impressive launch game. Itagaki's games were cutting edge for many reasons, but two huge ones were the 16:9 aspect ratio in 2001 and a fighting game skipping the arcades. Yes, in 2001, many fighters still launched in the arcades, but DOA 3 said, fuck that, arcades are waning in popularity, let's make our new game console exclusive. That was a big deal and a massive step forward for the fighting game genre, and DOA DOA 3 delivered. The new characters were great with the introduction of Christy and fan favorite Hitomi. The graphics and stages were unbelievable for 2001. I mean, just look at Zack's trademark alien costume, which is so impressive. It played great, and the story was improved with the introduction of CGI ending cutscenes. That said, there are quite a few issues. The game's lacking in costumes, even more so than DOA 4. The final boss is atrocious that even Itagaki didn't like because you played it from a whole new wacky perspective, and the multiple versions hiccup. Like many fighting games, DOA 3 had multiple versions, but instead of a new boxed copy release, DOA 3 simply had updated versions for every region. The initial American version is actually the worst, that never got updated even in the Greatest Hits re-release. Then the Japanese version released DOA 3.1, which is usually the fan favorite, adding moves, balance changes, and a new intro, but the European version, DOA 3.2, is the best version competitively with even more crucial balance changes. Why these updated editions were never released in the States, I have no idea. Thankfully, you can play all these versions on new Xbox consoles by manually setting the region to the UK or Japan before installing. Still, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth as an American player, and with the Greatest Hits re-release that contains, a brand new cover for crying out loud, you would think the disc would be updated for the newest version. Nope. Still a solid DOA, but definitely not the best. Itagaki has stated that DOA 4 is the best DOA he's made, and I can see where he's coming from. DOA 4 brings the series into high definition, and it looks great, with the stages and characters having that staple quality the series is known for. DOA 4 adds new characters like Kokoro, Elliot, Lisa, the first black DOA girl who previously made her debut in Extreme 1, and even a Halo character with Spartan 458. DOA 4 offers the largest character roster in the series yet, with 22, not including the infamous final boss Alpha 152, who's a ripe pain in the ass. DOA 4 has all the modes you would expect in the series at this point, but the real juicy treat is the online play. Dead or Alive Ultimate had online play, but DOA 4 is a totally separate beast, being massively influential to fighting games as a whole. DOA 4 introduced to the genre an avatar lobby system. A lobby was an actual in-game world, where you picked your avatar, which you could heavily customize, walk around, perform emotes, and even watch matches live on a TV. This was huge for 2005. It's basically what the Battle Hub is now in Street Fighter VI, just 20 years prior. To boot, unlike Devil's Third, the servers for DOA 4 remain active to this day. It's detailed a bit in Matthew's book called DOA Tomonobu Itagaki's Dolls, but basically Itagaki did some trickery with the DOA 4 servers, which Microsoft weren't too happy about. However, the result is a 20-year-old fighting game still online to this day, preserving its influential genius. The story mode also has to be the best so far, with great in-game cutscenes, a stiff challenge, and the best ending CGI cutscenes yet. For me, DOA 4 isn't the best DOA. Besides the online play, there really isn't too much special about it from prior entries, besides the new characters and HD graphics. The amount of costumes also isn't that great, but at least better than DOA 3. It's just not a big step up from the Dead or Alive games on the OG Xbox. Plus, when played on an Xbox Series X, it lacks that 4K resolution boost present on prior games, making certain titles like Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate look far sharper. Speaking of which, Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate has to be the best Itagaki DOA game. Sure, I get where Itagaki is coming from, that DOA 4 is mechanically and design-wise the best DOA, but for my hard-earned money, there's not a DOA game I can recommend more to play first than DOA 2U. It's a phenomenal remake of one of the best 3D fighting games ever made, making its characters and stages, which were already jaw-dropping in 1999, look that much better. Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate uses the engine from Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, and the graphics and art style still hold up 21 years later, especially in 4K on Xbox Series X. It retains all the lovely content you would expect from the series, makes it look and play better than ever, adds Hitomi from Dead or Alive 3, but the best aspect has to be the costumes. There's an ungodly amount of costumes in Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate, more so than any other Itagaki DOA. Some characters have 20 total costumes, and they can all be earned. By getting all the items in survival mode, which is pretty tough, both skill-based and luck-wise, you get all the costumes, a CG gallery, and even a shortened version of the G4 Icons DOA episode. Great watch, by the way, and I highly recommend checking out the full version on YouTube. The quality and sheer amount of content here is unmatched in Itagaki's DOA series, and that's why it's the best Itagaki Dead or Alive game. Plus, online play was introduced here, although it's only available through Insignia these days. There is a reason why I talk a lot of shit about Ninja Gaiden 4 and NG3. NG3 needed an updated version just to be passable, while NG4 also desperately needs an updated version. However, Itagaki's Ninja Gaiden 2004 was an incredible action game at launch. Even without NGB, NG04 would still be in the history books as one of the best action games of all time. Its open level design, challenging combat, and satisfying gameplay shocked the console gaming world in 2004 and still largely holds up to this day. NG04 does do a few things better than the updated versions. It has the Mirai tutorial, which new players need, the safe puzzles are better, it has the awesome Ninja of the Future outfit, and a better UT system. In NG04, you can only perform a UT through Essence, no cold charging UTs here. This makes the combat flow better and removes most of the money cheese strategies you see in NGB. Design-wise, it is superior, but on the other hand, tons of edits in NGB improve the overall experience, which I'll get into later. To boot, the DLC content was phenomenal with the Hurricane packs. HP1 was a remixed version of the campaign, which would become the basis for hard mode in NGB, and HP2 eventually became Eternal Legend in NGB as well. You can't get them anymore unless you have a modded console or through Insignia, but I recommend it. They're pretty good DLC add-ons. The raw bones of NG1 remain just as good to play today as it was in 2004, but the enhanced version turned it to the next level. Ninja Gaiden Black is an action game GOAT for a variety of reasons, but I think the core has to be the ramping up of the difficulties. Still to this day, NGB has to be the greatest example of how to do multiple difficulties right. The higher modes don't just increase the enemy health and increase the damage you take. Everything's different. There's harder enemy spawns, and said enemies have more challenging AI. Moves like Flying Swallow virtually don't even work on Alma anymore, 99% of the time, because the devs increased her defense. It basically removes most, if not all, the easy strategies you relied on before. All the chest drops are different, your item carry limit is less, bosses now have minions. On Master Ninja you get terrible Golden Scarab rewards, and powerful Nimpo is saved until way later in the game. Even the Fiend challenges are harder, or more boring depending on the certain one on higher modes. Plus, their rewards are different too. It's like playing an entirely different game, or fan mod, on higher difficulties. Black also added a bunch of stellar changes like an updated camera control, the introduction of smoke bombs, better overall weapon balancing, especially the projectile weapons, which are useful towards bosses now. In NG04, incendiary shurikens or the bow would often bounce right off them. Useful save statues were placed, you get 30 save slots instead of 10, and even bosses were further balanced to make them harder. You can no longer Flying Swallow spam the final boss, and Spirit Doku is no longer launchable. All this leads to a far more refined and improved experience. Plus, NGB introduces mission mode, adding 45 new missions alongside Eternal Legend, offering a short-form way to experience NG's fantastic combat. It's a must-play for literally anyone, and most consider it Itagaki's greatest game. But not me. Itagaki stated Ninja Gaiden 1 wasn't a perfect game and aimed to address many of its flaws in NG2, and Itagaki knocked it out of the park. I think this is objectively the greatest action game ever made. The raw combat with the arena design, enemy variety, and deliming system is unmatched on its own, but there's even more to NG2. The levels themselves are phenomenal for the most part. NG2 is even harder, but it's done in a fair way you can't really argue against every time you die, unless it's by a glitch. The 8 weapons you get may be the best arsenal in an action game, with each feeling incredible to play. The soundtrack kicks ass, the graphics still hold up, especially in 4K on Xbox Series X, and I can go on and on. That's not even mentioning the DLC mission mode, which is an absolute must. The only thing I really dislike about this game is the glitches and bugs, which do hamper the experience. NG2 definitely could have used some more patches, but besides that, it's basically perfect. Recently, I did an all-fights run on Master Ninja on both NGB and NG2, and from start to finish, I had a heavenly time with NG2, even when doing every test of valor. I just love the flow of the linear campaign here, whereas in NGB, it can be a drag at times to backtrack to a shop or to grind. With the linear design of NG2, you can't grind, or at least you weren't meant to, which keeps the game going at a steady pace. I cannot recommend this game enough, and if there's one Itagaki game to check out on this list, it would be Ninja Gaiden 2 for the Xbox 360. I'll see you later.